What's up, everybody? This is Penny from Whack-A-Witch Astrology, and today we are going to deal with a problem that is much bigger than me, that has preceded my lifetime and my existence here as an astrologer, and that is the history of astrology. This is a topic that really makes me kind of furious, because aside from the fact that I am an astrologer, I love learning, I love knowledge, and I believe in the power of each individual person rather than other people trying to take advantage and gaining power over other people and leaving them helpless or clueless. And knowledge is power. Knowledge is so important. We need to be able to educate ourselves, and we need to be able to practice our arts. Whatever our arts are, whether they're martial arts, whether it's painting, whether it's astrology, whether it's science, it's just so important that we get to practice these things. And the history of astrology is something that is not addressed hardly ever. And the closest you are going to come to hearing about it is hearing about witch trials, which is why I have brought up witch trials. I tried to bring up information about the actual history of just astrology itself in terms of what happened to astrologers and the punishments they received for studying astrology, but I wasn't able to find anything just like that online, so I figured we'd kind of go on a little bit of a search here together. I already found like a couple resources for this. Maybe you can find better ones than me, and if you can, go ahead and link them in the comments below so we can all check them out. But what I know of astrology is that we have found evidence of them practicing it back in ancient Egyptian times, but even further than that, astrology has been practiced and the zodiac signs have been studied since all the way back to 3000 BC. That is 3000 BC, ladies and gentlemen. So that is a really long time. Astrology is by far the longest lived study of people's personalities, and by consequence, by far it is the most elaborate study of people's personalities. Even though we're starting to like look at the brain more and understand the brain, we still don't like have that level with neuroscience that we have with astrology. And I think the two, neuroscience and astrology, will pair beautifully once we know a little bit more about neuroscience. So I would love to start pairing that with astrology, but right now there's just not that much information, but I am pretty avid on reading about that. Anyway, back to the topic of history and astrology. So even though astrology was being studied for all of these years, this is about witch hunts though. Astrology dates back to 3000 BC. It was studied all throughout history. We can do a quick Google search about historical figures who used astrology. And let's see what comes up on this link. bestonlinepsychics.net. So I know that Genghis Khan was one of them. Napoleon was one of them. Frankly, there's some really bad people who used astrology to help them gain power, who had an astrologer by their side. Julius Caesar used astrology as well. It is said that Julius Caesar's death was predicted by an astrologer, and his astrologer tried to warn him against going down that road because they saw something and knew that he would be killed there, which the way that's worded to me sounds kind of odd, and I don't know the legitimacy of that. But yeah, basically everyone throughout history who has led, who has conquered, who has like brought up armies and stuff like that, these motherfuckers keep astrology by their side. All right, look, we got King Henry there. And honestly, it's harder to find powerful figures throughout history who haven't used astrology. And I believe even nowadays we have people who are low-key using astrology without talking to us about it. And in modern day times, we face more of the issue where astrology has just been made to look kind of silly. But what I want to talk about today is how it actually led up to that. How did this ancient study of the stars turn into something that's just kind of laughable? Well, with the witch hunts, the witch hunts are essentially like, let's see, there's one part in here that specifically mentions foretelling of the future, right here. Oof. Gives me the heebie-jeebies. Okay, so that is where we see the overlap between witchcraft and astrology, and there are other books you can find about history that will more specifically mention astrology and palmistry and other forms of divination, and how history has basically attempted to destroy them and destroy these arts. But you've got to think, we have these people here, these world leaders who were using astrology. Yeah, it's specifically, this article on Wikipedia mentions the royal figures who created these laws outlawing witchcraft and the adjustments they made to them, like Elizabeth I made an adjustment to the laws regarding witchcraft. Hers doesn't sound like it was that bad though. And what happened in Scotland as well. Just all of these things. These people, these political leaders, they were all using astrology. They all had like astrologers and fortune tellers who were there by their side, helping them conquer, helping them gain victory. And at the same time, they were making astrology illegal for the common people. What is with these ads? Basically, they didn't want the common people using astrology. That's the only reason why that would be happening. You know, clearly they know that astrology was a legitimate art because they were paying people and keeping those people directly by their sides while they were conquering, while they were ruling. And at the same time, they made it illegal for regular, everyday people to use astrology. And using astrology, any form of witchcraft, was punishable by death, as we see in the articles here, as we've heard in the witch trials in the United States, in England, in Scotland, wherever else. If you know of another place, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. Let's get a list going here. So yeah, astrology was punishable by death. And what I feel happened during this time, that's when astronomy and astrology split off. So astronomy became the recognized science and study of the stars, and astrology, was considered witchcraft, and it was illegal, and it was punishable by death. So people had to either stop studying astrology, burn their books, get rid of all knowledge and evidence they had about astrology, and a lot of people who knew a lot about astrology were even murdered. So we lost a lot of important information at that time. We lost a lot about the art. We lost a lot about the studies, and I'm sure this information is still being kept somewhere, but it's being kept away from regular, ordinary, everyday people. Now we had a period where astrology started to become more popular again, and people started to gain interest in it. Now that it's not illegal, like right now, astrology and fortune tellers were actually protected by the Constitution in the United States. Like, it's our right to be able to practice our free speech and express our opinions. And if my opinion is that I can see the future, then that is protected under the Constitution. So now that we're allowed to do it, we gradually, over this past 100 years or so, started to improve our, become interested in astrology again. I think specifically in the 60s, 70s, people started studying astrology a little bit more. And we had just little horoscopes here and there popping up in magazines. And for the most part, it was stuff that was kind of silly at first. And even when I was a little bit younger, the stuff that I would see in some of the popular magazines about astrology, it just wasn't real astrology, but I didn't know any better. To me, that was real astrology because that was the only thing I had been exposed to. But once I started studying astrology, I found out that most of the people writing in those magazines were actually creative writers. They're not actually astrologers. They're just people who have creative writing degrees and wanted to create something that was entertaining for people to read in the magazines. So astrology, really, whether it was intentional or unintentional, once astrology finally came back and faced its revival, it was faced with a lot of scrutiny because it was kind of made to look silly by these magazines, quite frankly, like some of these ridiculous things you would find in these magazines. And now we have the internet, and like almost everyone has access to the internet. There's even homeless people who have access to the internet, which is amazing. I feel like the internet is something that has really empowered us, and we're able to study and exchange information more easily. And we're starting to build astrology back up closer to what it used to be. Regaining a lot of knowledge through people like myself. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here because I know I'm so small in the grand scheme of things, but people like myself who take the time to research astrology and uncover things and do this type of investigation where we learn more about the asteroids and the planets and how they're affecting people's lives. And we try to figure out how to do things that haven't been done using astrology in so long. So that is my perspective on the history of astrology and some of the things I wanted to share with you. I wish I had better references to share, but honestly, what I found on Google just wasn't that great. I'm going to be on the lookout for books that mention more stuff about the history of astrology and palmistry and other divination and quote, quote, witchcraft arts. And yeah, let's go ahead and share some resources on this and get the information out. If you want to support me on Patreon, I will put the link to my Patreon in the description below. And thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. Make sure you've hit the notification bell as well, so you can be with me here every single day that I upload a video and watch and participate in what I am working on. So stay tuned, and I'll see you soon, both here and on Facebook. Bye.